Her Own Rules by Barbara Taylor Bradford, read by Diana Quick. The child sat on a rock perched high up on the river's bank. Elbows on knees, chin cupped in hands, she sat perfectly still, her eyes trained on the family of ducks circling around on the surface of the dark water. Her eyes were large, set wide apart, greyish-green in colour and solemn, and her small face was serious. But from time to time a smile would tug at her mouth as she watched the antics of the ducklings. It was a bright day in August. The sky was a piercingly blue arc, unblemished by cloud, the golden sun a perfect sphere, and on this balmy summer's afternoon nothing stirred. Not a blade of grass nor a leaf moved. The only sounds were the faint buzzing of a bee, hovering above roses rambling along a crumbling brick wall, the splash of water rushing down over the dappled stones of the river's bed. The child remained fascinated by the wildlife on the river, and so intent was she in her concentration she barely moved. It was only when she heard her name being called that she bestirred herself and glanced quickly over her shoulder. Instantly she scrambled to her feet, waving at the young woman who stood near the door of the cottage set back from the river. "Mary! Come on! Come in!" the woman called, beckoning to the child as she spoke. It took Mary only a moment to open the iron gate in the brick wall, and then she was racing along the dirt path, her plump little legs running as fast as they could. "Mum, you're back!" she cried, rushing straight into the woman's outstretched arms, almost staggering in her haste to get to her. The young woman caught her daughter, held her close and nuzzled her neck. She murmured, "I've a special treat for tea." And then she looked down into the child's bright young face, her own suddenly serious. "I thought I told you not to go down to the river alone, Mary. It's dangerous." "I only sit on the rock, Ma'am. I don't go near the edge. Eunice said I could go and watch the baby ducks." The woman sighed under her breath. Straightening, she took hold of the child's hand and led her into the cottage. Once they were inside, she addressed the girl who was sitting in a chair at the far end of the kitchen reading a book. "Eunice, I don't want Mary going to the river alone. She might easily slip and fall in. I've told you this so often. Eunice, are you listening to me?" "Yes, Mrs. Sanderson, and I'm sorry I won't let her go there by herself again." Turning away abruptly, Kate went and filled the tea kettle, put it on the gas stove, and struck a match. The girl slapped her book shut and rose. "I'll get off then, Mrs. Sanderson, now that you're home." Kate nodded. "Thanks for babysitting. Shall I come tomorrow, or can you manage?" "I think so, but please come on Friday morning for a few hours. That would help me." When they were alone, Mary ran across to the table which her mother had covered with a white tablecloth and set for tea, and scrambled up onto one of the straight wooden chairs. She sat waiting patiently. The child loved her mother, and this adoration shone on her face as her eyes followed Kate everywhere. She was content, now that her mother had come home. Kate had been out for most of the day. Mary missed her when she was gone, even if it was for only a short while. Her mother was her entire world. To the 5-year-old, Kate was the perfect being, with her gentle face, her shimmering red-gold hair, clear blue eyes, and loving nature. They were always together, inseparable really, for the feeling was mutual. Kate loved her child to the exclusion of all else. Mother and child exchanged a few desultory words as they munched on the small tea sandwiches Kate had made, but mostly they ate in silence. Both of them were ravenous. Mary had not had a proper lunch today because Eunice had ruined the cottage pie her mother had left for them, and which had only needed to be reheated. The babysitter had left it in the oven far too long, and it had burned to a crisp. They had had to make do with bread and jam and an apple each. Kate was starving because she had skipped lunch altogether. She had been tramping the streets of the nearby town, trying to find a job, and she had not had the time or the inclination to stop at one of the local cafes for a snack. Kate's hopes had been raised at her last interview earlier that afternoon, just before she had returned home. There was a strong possibility that she would get a job at the town's most fashionable dress.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?